All right. Technically, we're live. I'm waiting for it to catch up.
Okay.
Anyway, I can mute it on this end. Okay, I think we're live, so let me
Okay.
just Okay, there we go. Yeah, I just had to check my audio on there real quick. All right, here we go. I don't know if anybody's with us, but we're gonna do a little impromptu thing on StreamYards to explain a few things that have been going on with this channel. And then we're going to have a discussion, which I'm sure you figured out at least some inclination of it, considering what's on the fucking screen. Let's start off with, unfortunately, until we can figure out an alternative or fix the issue. Well, first, let me explain what the issue is. I got a new graphics card because that's just people who may have been watching my channel before, or where a lot of my games were chugging real bad because I was using an older graphics card. Blah blah fucking blah. So we went out. We got a new graphics card. It wasn't a top end graphics card because I'm not using a top end motherboard. I got a decent power supply, but that being beside the point. So we got this fucking graphics card. We install it. Running all the games I was trying to run before were lagging. They're running great. They look really fucking good. It just jacked my Guild Wars right up to a nice level. All kinds of shit. So, all right, okay, this is fucking awesome. Let me start streaming some shit because it looks so much better. And the first time we tried to stream, which I think was like the Mad Max stream, it chugged so fucking hard. It was like I was using like a 3-generation old fucking like graphics card. It lagged, it chugged. The graphics looked good like they're supposed to, but the game itself, OBS was just choking it the fuck out. Would not display the footage correctly. So I'm like, okay. So I tinkered around with the settings and some stuff. I fucked around in OBS, changed every setting, looked up tutorials, went back in, tried a different game, which then was a Ys Monstrum Nox, which is less graphically demanding, still dragging its ass. So I go back again later after frustration. I tried to play Kingdoms of Amalur, which again is not the most graphically demanding game given its graphics engine. Still the same fucking problem. I even tried Dusk, and that shit lagged out real bad. So there hasn't been anything on my channel while I'm getting fucking frustrated. And so Josh goes and looks up the fucking all over Discord. He's looking up alternatives, trying to see if there's an issue with OBS that we can fix. And he finds out that it's the NVENC, NVENC in OBS, which is one of the most prominent fucking streaming things for gaming and videos and shit, has an issue with this particular NVIDIA fucking graphics card where it's not designed, of all fucking things, to work with OBS. And that threw us off to begin with because we're like, well, what the fuck kind of sense does that make? So he looks up some more and we find out literally it just boiled down to, for whatever reason, this particular model of graphics card, NVIDIA just did not factor in OBS streaming and how it works and the NVENC and encoding and shit like that. So they just said, fuck it. They didn't bother updating it in any way. They didn't do anything to actually fix this. So not only is it an issue with optimization, but this thing actively fucks up when trying to work with OBS because OBS can't use the tools it normally uses to stream your video while running this from this graphics fucking card. And today it just came to a head when an issue again that we did not know existed is born of the same problem. I went to just do a simpler game this morning like Dusk, and then it flat out killed the metadata to actually get the stream to stream. And Josh looked up. Sure enough, it's a similar problem. It's the same fucking reason with this one model of fucking video card. If you want to shed some more light on that, you looked it up.
Oh, there's nothing really much I could add to it. It's just something about these cards are just not supported by that system, and we're gonna have to switch over to GTX or something like that to
Which
get a
is
better performance.
unfortunate given prices and availability. Unfortunately, that may take longer than I want it to.
So we're going to try to do a little bit of talky talk and see if people like that.
And
At least in the time being.
believe me, I fucking hate it. I am
And
not
it's
wild about having to do shit this way.
all in the eye of getting back to being able to do some more of the retro style games.
So, unfortunately, and I don't know, I don't see anybody in the comments, but
This is for people if they watch it later.
this is if anybody looks at this later. That is the unfortunate state of things right now. So we're gonna work on it, but frankly, we just got done dealing with automotive shit. We just got done dealing with pet shit. You know, without giving any family details, my dad just got out of the fucking VA hospital. Shit always hits us hardest during this fucking season without fail. So I just do not have the finances. Everything on my show, as y'all know, comes out of fucking pocket. And we ain't exactly fucking loaded. So I have to work around my finances to try to fix this card bullshit, which unfortunately means there's probably only going to be updates once or twice a week, and it's probably going to be sad, stupid bullshit like this until I can fix this.
But you get to hear our melodious voices.
Not that that's much of a draw, but at least it's something on the channel, and hopefully somebody will get something out of it. I don't know. I'm in a very poor mood, so I apologize. This shit fucking pisses me off. But moving on, y'all probably noticed this weird fucking thing on the screen here. And I'm sure some of you remember some of the initial stupidity surrounding this particular game. I'm going to let you pick up first before I start ranting.
Well, ranting. Well, this isn't so much directly about Diablo Immortal or its air quote partnership, and it has more to do with a broader topic that I'll say a friend brought up the other night during a conversation, and it was they work in the game development business. Is that all right for me to say?
Yeah, just don't out.
I'm not throwing out a name.
Yeah, no company or nothing. Yeah, you're fine.
No names, no companies. And they mentioned the fact that the industry they're working in is now having to reassess things because of what's been going on with the Chinese game market, i.e., largely that they have become hostile to Western countries' development. They're really clamping down on what's available and allowed, financial avenues, I guess is one way to put it, or should I just say odorous DLC and such. But the various elements of what's shifting in the game
they're
market.
even clamping down on some of their own developers.
Well, I know. I'm just saying because this was considered like the big market people or these companies were going after.
Hey, can we just talk about that for a second? Like, even before this, it eluded me and a lot of other people why the Chinese market was considered such a big deal. Yeah, there's fucking millions upon millions of fucking people over there. But they sit beneath a government that actively stifles everything they do and is incredibly like xenophobic to the point of hostility. And they didn't allow, even when things were better, hardly anything out without huge like vetting and editing and all kinds of shit that cost more money for less profit. I never understood the fascination with the alleged Chinese market.
I can sum it up, and I'm going to put it in a very basic way. If you've ever been around any degree of business, and it doesn't matter what the business is, you could be shoveling shit or, building a better taco, whatever. A lot of times, corporations are filled at the top with incredibly stupid people. And I mean incredibly stupid people. People who don't even know their own jobs 9 out of 10 times.
It's motherfuckers with a head full of like numbers and nothing much else.
I wouldn't even say that because a lot of them steal other people's work, and then claim it for themselves. The thing is that a lot of times when you're dealing with business and there's an air quote emerging market, one reason they usually try to focus on it is not so much to develop it and treat it on the same level as their already air quote developed market. It's so that they can go in and exploit the unholy crap out of them because they are assuming those people have lower expectations and therefore are more starved and easier to take advantage of. The main reason that most of these game development companies were interested in China was because it's very common, from my understanding. I can always be corrected by Chinese bots, I'm sure. But it's very common for games to have like outrageous monetization in those areas because we're so starved for entertainment.
Well, you only got to look at an average Chinese like smartphone game to see that practice is everywhere.
So a lot of Western companies saw this. They saw the profit margins some of the early end companies had, even with Chinese companies dipping into the profits. And we're like, yeah, we want to go over there and exploit those people too. Well, and let's just call it what it is. A lot of these studios saw a market that they could literally exploit, and they were trying to jump in there, and anybody with a brain knew this was going to happen. But it has really messed with the game development industry, hasn't it?
A lot of the AAA developers are, whether they admit it or not, who have put their foot this far into the Chinese fucking pool, have kind of discovered there's fucking piranhas in it and they ain't been fed.
Well, they're missing feet now.
Yeah.
I amuse myself, but I think this isn't a good example. Diablo Immortal is a game that bent over backwards to get itself into a market that made no sense. So, to lay the framework here, if you don't know anything about Diablo, and I'm going to bet most people watching this do, but if you don't, Diablo is a long-standing Blizzard franchise. It used to go under wasn't it called Blizzard Time, where they would develop a game and it'd be great, but it would take
there was a joke about Blizzard development cycles back in the day. And by the way, this has come from two guys who were like old school fucking Blizzard fans back in the day. And this despite me not being a big PC guy, I still played their games. Talk about the original Warcraft, Warcraft 2, freaking Blackthorn. Was it Lost Vikings? Remember that shit?
Oh gosh, yes.
And we were playing the World of Warcraft from he was playing the first beta, and I was in all the way back in like vanilla, original, and we played it all the way up until just like last year when we finally threw our hands up. Yeah,
but Diablo is a long-standing series of kind of riffing on role-playing like D&D games, in a more hack and slash manner, where you're going from various different levels. It's an entertaining game. A lot of people love it, but it's been generally seen as a PC franchise and console second series. Not to say that they necessarily were weaker on console, just that it usually was.
The sad thing is Diablo 3 ended up being better on the consoles for a while.
Oh, the market. And anyways, so when they tried to go mobile with Diablo Immortal here, so if by chance you don't have any idea, there's a possibility you don't.
You might have heard the infamous phrase, "Don't you guys have phones?"
No, I don't.
In that particular BlizzCon where they announced this, there was in a usually rabid fan base, there was a lot of boos, hisses, and negative response even in the crowd at BlizzCon. And I remember this brain dead fucking rep they got up there. He like puts his hands up. He's like, "What? Don't you guys have phones?" That's not the point, dickhead. They don't want to play it on their fucking phone.
Well, let's be perfectly honest. The presentation of it on the stage was not for the fan.
It was for the Chinese investors, right?
It was for the investors, and it was to be the whole look, investors of Activision, we are going to make the mobile game for the big market of over the seas.
And the reason there's this little red tab here on the card for Diablo Immortal is because this was the quote unquote partner company who, if you're unfamiliar with, next to Tencent, NetEase is a fairly large Chinese gaming company, let's call it generously. They've been responsible for a whole shitload of the Chinese mobile game market, and they were the ones that freaking Activision and what was left of Blizzard by then, which wasn't much, went to handle the freaking stuff for this mobile game, because they were trying desperately to break into the Chinese gacha game market.
Unfortunately. But by and large, this is a good example of companies bending and twisting and just tearing apart their properties to get into the Chinese market because it was so freaking large. And now as we watch China... Oh, I invented another country. Welcome to China. It's a weird name. It's hard to say. Doesn't roll off the tongue. Anyways, as China's government basically kind of tightens its fist and chokes the gaming market to death, even in its own native country, we can see the hostility going towards Western and other countries' developments, with the restrictions, with the just straight out refusals to list games.
Oh yeah, and don't think this is just a Western issue. I mean, Japanese games are getting the shit censored and choked and rejected out of them too.
Well, I did say other countries.
Oh, I was bringing that up as another big example.
But just in the current context, because we are in part of the West, it's an interesting thing because we've watched so many of these companies twist and turn and refocus onto the Chinese market, that the fact that you're watching them slam the door shut on their hands, it's interesting because it's like, what do these companies do now? They hooked so much of their boat and their future success onto this market that they could exploit, and then they got their fingers caught in the cookie jar and can't even profit off a little of this concept. So is the little dregs of profit and the crumbs of what little the Chinese government will allow to fall into the hands of foreigners going to be enough to keep these companies from having to make major shifts? What do you think, Favre?
Well, just looking at some of the developments I've seen, I'm not going to name off names here, but I've seen multiple games or game franchises do this thing, right? Like making games is already fucking expensive.
Yes.
And I've seen games twist around and censor this thing and that thing specifically for the Chinese market, which is more money because it's extra development costs, making a separate version that's acceptable to the Chinese market. Or it's worse, and they just censor the whole fucking thing for everybody so that they don't have to do it separately, which that just pisses off your domestic and like other foreign country markets when you unnecessarily censor something to... It's like if you got like 5 kids, right?
Oh my God, no.
And just an example. So let's say like you got 5 kids. Your kids all love fucking chocolate ice cream. You got one fucking kid and all they want is strawberry. This is like, instead of going and getting a scoop of fucking strawberry ice cream, you make them all eat fucking strawberry ice cream. Well, it makes this kind of fucking sense. You have a wider market. You have a worldwide market in the case of some of these AAA studios. And they're fucking up everything in some cases to give it all to this one kid.
Well,
it's not viable.
I guess I could say that goes back to the thing where I said a lot of these companies are led by very stupid people.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the kind of stupid logic. It's
everything,
like, hey,
everything
let's screw over
from EA because we got domestic companies run by idiots like EA, Activision, and then 2K. Let's not forget those motherfuckers. Their executives are brain dead. Then we got foreign interests who are just as bad, like Ubisoft and fucking Capcom. Capcom being infamous in this way for years now, when younger executives were actually willing to risk shit to come out and say, yeah, the elder executives of Capcom are not only short-sighted, but they're just belligerent and stubborn to any idea that is not their own, no matter how much it might hurt the company. It's this kind of thinking. It's like, well, I'm in charge. I'm big and important, so I don't care what happens to this company as long as I'm in charge and I'm still making money. The company could burn to ashes tomorrow. That's fine. I got a golden fucking parachute.
Well, that's probably a good chunk of it to a degree. But like I was saying, do you think they're going to switch tracks and try to more focus back on their original markets, or are they just going to continue to try to twist themselves for the Chinese market, what little's there?
My personal opinion is I hope that they will. And I think some company, for every big dumbass company, we got smaller companies that are growing despite all the shit going on.
Yeah.
So I think that some of the companies may wise up at least enough to adapt to, how do I put this? Adapt enough to go back to kind of trying to, in between, microtransactions and other bullshit, to try to cater to their base audience, which is where their actual profits come from. But it's going to take a lot to shake these motherfuckers' trees to figure it out. So I think in the near future, we might see some turnaround, especially if the Chinese market, goes full fucking lockdown on foreign interest, because then, well, you just lost a shitload of money because you're not even going to be able to break even at that point. You can't sell nothing. So I think that their outcome is going to be based partially on how much harder the Chinese crack down and how fast they do it, because they're going to have to see, like we've said before with executives, they have to see real damage before they do anything.
I think I can actually give a good example. It's not a game I play, and I know you loathe it with every fiber of your being, and possibly from an intergalactic standpoint. But look at what China did with Fortnite.
Yeah,
they never let them sell it. They never let them sell any of the DLC that would have gone, or the little knick-knack chitchy stuff you can buy. Yeah. That would keep the game alive, and they basically destroyed its ability to exist in China. So one of the biggest games and profit makers that they could have profited off insanely well from their own perspective, and is it Rare? No,
that's Epic, man.
Epic. I'm getting names mixed up. And Epic would have made a killing in China with it. And it was just smothered to death slowly by the Chinese government, just refusing to allow it to be listed.
Chinese government and Chinese industry, such as it is, I mean, let's be real. No matter how much people want to talk about it, it's a communist system. Communist systems always work a certain set of ways. Then the minute something comes in, they might let it in, but when it becomes popular enough that it might alter any kind of perception or attention span, they're going to lock it down.
Well, let's put it like this. Just using Fortnite as an example, they let it in, but it never made a profit.
No.
It was never allowed to make a single red cent. It couldn't sell anything. It couldn't be sold. It was a free-to-play game with no monetization. So it was just a cost lead, and not even...
It was literally China going, give me that.
To the point where they just shut the servers down.
Yeah, because they couldn't make any profit. They were spending money, not making it.
So look at it from this perspective. If this is the future of most Western games in the Chinese market, do you think that is going to be enough to force them to have to come back to the table and deal with their original fan bases, which in a lot of cases, let's face it, they burnt their bridges gleefully down with. And what
Japanese games have had such a huge resurgence in popularity. I mean, along with anime, when you look at the comics industry, for a reason. Because a lot of Western developers, they either play all this social justice bullshit, or they try to pander to the Chinese. Either one doesn't really work for most domestic audiences because you're belittling your primary audience to pander to someone who doesn't really give a fuck.
I think what we're going to see is these companies start to try to pivot a bit. They're probably going to keep hanging around the Chinese fang, hoping they change their mind for a few more years. But I think you're going to start seeing a lot of the smaller companies make that twist away from it fairly rapidly. So it'd be the smaller companies that adapt first, in my opinion, because they got closer margins, which I think could be interesting. It could give them a chance to outcompete the big boys as the big boys slowly lumber around, still kind of trying to play the game to see if China will open the door to the cash. And that might actually create a situation where we have a lot of smaller companies really take off and start eating the lunch of these bigger companies. They could become AMC, you know? They're just a bunch of dinosaurs wailing from the tar pit as the as the mammals run around and eat their lunch for them.
I mean, if they keep up like they are, it's entirely possible.
I mean, like, look at what's going on with EA. Just from a basic standpoint, they're screwing up on a local level. And it's like, okay, well, if they can't sell a bunch of this stuff in the new, glorious, definitely not communist market, then what do? They have to woo their audiences back, and they've ruined their goodwill. They've ruined their ability to produce, in a lot of cases, something worth buying. I mean, even Halo Infinite, from what I've seen, is a freaking travesty. And this is after a year's freaking delay on it. We live in a world where all development cycles continue from the point you purchase them for years. And it's a ridiculous situation to be in. So I do think what we might see is we might see a bunch of small developers ascend while we watch a lot of the big ones slam into the ground and explode or implode or something like that. Trying to find a less graphic image. But that's my take. I think we're going to watch a lot of these older companies because they're inflexible and they have enough money to not initially think they need to switch away from something. Just slowly kill themselves. I mean, we're already seeing it with a lot of these smaller companies starting to come out with some fairly well done and received games.
Well, you've heard me talk about New Blood and 3D Realms' recent resurgence before.
Yeah,
they're big examples. They're not only taking care of taking advantage of the want for these retro style or at least old kind of more arcade style shooters and games like that, but they're putting out quality products that cost less money because they cost less money to fucking make.
Well, I think it's a really basic thing is that you go, hey, I don't have a massive budget, so I can't put a bunch of cutscenes in this to make it look good and have super duper graphics, so I have to focus on the gameplay. So you have like Dusk with New Blood where, yeah, there's a storyline in there, but it's told in a very old style 90s kind of way of there's some dialogue and there's some stuff going on in the levels, but you're like screaming through, having fun, blowing stuff up.
And then look at it's coming out next year, but I played the demo for like Gloomwood. That's just like Dusk meets Thief.
Sorry about my chair, ladies.
That's all right. But I'm like, that's way more narrative, to some extent, but you're mostly reading text, but it's very narrative driven and it's very, atmospheric. And it feels like a completely different company made it.
in Gloomwood's favor, I'd say it takes the best elements of Thief and combines them with the best elements of Amnesia. And I don't like Amnesia.
Yeah, exactly.
So it gives you the combat capability and sneaking of Thief, and it gives kind of that narrative feel, at least from what I've seen of it,
Mm-hmm.
that Amnesia, the Dark Descent had, where you find like little creepy notes, and
Yeah.
you'd figure out little puzzles and things, and you get kind of different options on how to deal with things.
And
I,
Gloomwood seems to understand, and I think it's because, New Blood was first and foremost an FPS company, even if they were retro ones. But they understand that there needs to be environmental stuff is great, a creepy atmosphere is great, but there needs to be more gameplay than run and hide.
well, I think it comes down to a philosophy of more with less.
Yeah.
Um, cut the fat because you don't need long cinematic sections to explain something if you can just run into a note or find something.
Yeah.
The very a thing that I think people probably congratulate Dark Souls a little too much on is its environmental storytelling. I I do think they do a good job at it, but I do think that they get a little too much, too many parades for it. But I do think
I
that is
I can agree
something
with that.
that I think is a better idea. I think more companies are going to take advantage of that by focusing more on the gameplay and the entertainment, and then using the story to help support that.
Yeah. And I think in the overall scheme of things, some of these companies, discounting the smaller guys who are definitely climbing their way up. For fuck's sake, I don't fucking like League of Legends because I don't like fucking MOBAs. We talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
But Riot Games got off their fucking ass and they went out and contacted the studio and put out what is apparently a really fucking good animated series that people fucking love. They got with freaking arrows like Airship Collective or Airship Syndicate. And they just made a fucking RPG based on the world in fucking League of Legends, or at least part of the world, because there's two different places in the show. But whatever.
Oh yeah.
But they're developing a world that their player base likes into something that, in both cases, I've seen people go, "You don't need to have played League of Legends to understand and appreciate this thing." But that's how you do it right: is you draw people into your product in a way that they will actually find approachable. You don't try to force people into a certain way that you want them to consume your product.
Oh yeah.
And they need to take notice, because how many fucking JRPGs have we seen come out this last year?
Oh,
In terms of brand new ones, we had
maybe 4 or 5.
yeah, we had what was that one with the weird disease and all the VR stuff in it? I can't remember the name of it. We were just playing it. I'm terrible. I can't remember the fucking name. It's sitting out on my shelf. But that one came out. Then there was I'm having a hell of a time with names today.
Well, let's just say
it was
that
Tales of Arise, which was super popular and sold really well, like all over the damn world, with the exception of China, of course. And I don't even like the Japanese have found a perfect time to exploit a market that kind of was going really stale, because now they're putting out stuff like that. And then you have some companies like Marvelous just re-released those old JRPGs, the Trails of Cold Steel games.
Yes.
I quit playing turn-based RPGs like a few years ago, and I played that one in like a span of under 2 weeks, all the way to the fucking end.
Yeah.
I ain't done that shit in years.
We can definitely do
starvation for this stuff.
I think that can be a topic for another one of these. We can cover that. But I do think that we're watching a situation in which the industry is definitely going to have to change, and with some of the things going on with the Chinese market, I think that's going to force it, and it might be positive in the long term. In the short term, I think we're going to see more odious practices come out. We're going to see uglier failures come out. We're going to see more spectacular, long-running jokes.
But
And we're
like
going to
next
see more
time,
2K trying to get kids to gamble in
yeah,
game.
I think next one we'll want to talk. Like we're gonna probably do another one of these next week, guys, so I can fix the issue we already discussed. The one next week's going to probably be about some of this over monetization. Here's the thing. I don't mind DLC. I've said this before. But when you go from DLC to just blatant monetization to casino things to just blatant cash grabs, or the new thing that Ubi's trying that even their own developers and like union people are screaming at them not to do, trying to buy into the NFT economy. We're going to talk about that shit next week.
Yeah. I mean, the sad thing is we've watched the market twist itself, turn itself, and just butcher things for short-term gain in another market that was not sustainable to begin with. And now we're watching all the fallout from it. We're watching a bunch of incapable of doing anything companies just kind of flounder about. And I'm like, well, one, I don't care about graphics and a lot of these excesses of presentation. I'm more interested in the gameplay. So I've been enjoying the retro relaunch. That doesn't mean there's not a lot of trash in there, but there's been plenty of games who come out that have used the older styles as a art style. I'm going to put that as art style, and it as far as I'm concerned has reintroduced the idea of gameplay over presentation. And I'd love to see that remain something where smaller companies can come into the market and say, well, we're just going to have a fun idea that we think is going to be entertaining. And we're not going to worry about every single other little thing. And I'd like to see that stay, even with, like, why not have the big blockbuster, flashy thing? At the same time, you have people who are just making stuff for the fun of it.
Yeah.
The concept is we need to have a good variety of things in entertainment. Well, at the same time, we need to stop going, hey, we need to change everything to suit one market because we are lazy idiots. And I think that's going to take time for it to really set in because, as I've said with other franchises in the past, the only way in some cases for these things to get better, looks directly at DC Comics and Marvel, is to basically let them fail completely because it's the only way you're going to get rid of the people who hold them back from doing things that people want. They don't respect the products. They don't respect the customer. And they sure as hell don't respect themselves enough to actually do a good job. And that's my piece on it.
No, that's...
And this is not to hit on the people working in these companies. A lot of times they are taking advantage of people who are legitimately concerned with the product they're producing and using them to produce trash because they're giving them terrible deadlines.
Well, we know for a fact by now that in some companies, especially game developers, are some of the most shit on motherfuckers in any industry in the States, especially.
If you are a code monkey, you know how kind of pain it is. And I'm not shitting on those people. I'm shitting on the people on the top making direct choices to produce a lesser product because they think they can get away with it. Let's just face it. They think their customers are stupid enough to put the slop in their mouth and eat it and call it filet. I'm not even going to call it that. I'm screwing all my way. Oh, it's going to be all that for me. Delicious for me. But they really do think their customers are stupid. And it's why they always seem surprised when something goes wrong. And they blame everyone but themselves. That's a part of the higher corporate system in a lot of cases. where it's the blame game. You blame everyone but yourself. You shift what you didn't do, didn't know, screwed up onto someone else. And we're just seeing it more publicly now. So I'm taking direct shots at the top of these companies. Now, that's not to say if you have a lazy jerk in the freaking line that they don't drag the product down. But in general, a lot of these choices are coming from the top.
It's always either some shithead executive or some shady ass investors who don't give a fuck about anybody who's actually making the product.
And they don't care about the product or the people.
Or you have the people in charge who were just like from the very outset looking to rip motherfuckers off. Like that shit with Frogwares and fucking Take-Two Interactive.
And Big Ben.
Yeah.
But that's my take on it. I think we're going to see the shift go on very slowly. We're probably going to see a couple companies go down, and it could be for the better. It could be for the better. My big thing is I hope we see enough companies rise up that they can absorb a lot of the people who would otherwise lose jobs because of this kind of stupidity and reliance on an unstable market.
Yeah, hopefully.
But that's my take. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I think we've beat a lot of it in the fucking skull with a hammer already.
Well, I think we could go into greater detail, but I do legitimately think that it's better just to go on the basic level and be most direct about it.
I mean, we've said a lot of it. It's like a lot of dishonest fucking business practices and, mistreatment of, customer base come directly from the fucking top.
Yeah.
Because some of the developers still enjoy their job, or at least they try to. There was I'm not going to go too much over it. There was a quote from a guy from Ubisoft who was saying, he's like, I came here to make games and to try and enjoy my job. He's like, this is not what I signed up for.
Well, and like I said, as far as I'm concerned, when you produce a product that is subpar, it's because you don't respect the customer. You don't respect the other person, and you don't respect yourself. You are doing shoddy work, and if you're aware of your shoddy work, because there are people who don't understand they're doing bad work. But if you do, then it's simply a lack of respect in every conceivable manner. And that's why it bothers me. I don't want to sugarcoat it or call it anything else, but things like Diablo Immortal and the partnering up with places like Tencent and NetEase is because they simply don't respect their customers. They don't respect the Chinese customer. They don't respect the Western customer. And they sure as hell don't respect themselves enough to go, hey, look, our product's good. And we don't need to bend our knees and get on it for some government that wants to disrespect our customer base and treat them like stupid children. So we refuse to bend our knee to you, you sons of bitches.
Yeah.
But no, they don't respect their customers. They want to abuse and abuse the customers in China. And now a lot of these companies are upset they can't.
And a lot of it comes from the executive level where they're looking at us going, oh, we can't fucking just exploit this foreign market that is almost like a captive audience in a lot of cases. It's like, no, because they're a captive audience by design. And the motherfuckers that made them that way don't want you butting in and eating up any of the money. They're glad to take your fucking money for development costs and shit, but they ain't going to give you nothing back.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the Chinese government is doing anything to protect its people. It's as abusive, if not more, than these companies are. And it's using these companies to enable its own abuse of other people. So they are not in the right here as much as the companies who want to abuse these people aren't. I'd rather see the customers in China be treated like anywhere else. We really need to move away from a lot of this. But I will stop yammering on, you beautiful, sexy beast of people and possible people from the Horsehead Nebula.
Until we can fix this fucking bullshit we're probably gonna have to replace this graphics card and out of pocket. That's gonna take me a little bit after all the repairs and shit we've had to do this little 1 month. So I'll do what I can, but it may take a while. So probably for a few weeks we're just gonna end up doing some shit like this, like once, every week or two. I do have another one planned already, like I said. That'll probably be sometime next week. But anybody who sees this later, because I only had like one viewer, I think, here.
Well,
So any of you who pop on later, hey, like leave a comment in the space under the video later. Drop us some opinions. Give us something to read. We're starved for fucking reading material these days.
Well, depending on how things go and if I can convince Favre, we might try to shoot for oh Lord oh hey Potato Revan for a Monday and a Thursday show.
We'll see what we can do. It'll depend on availability of topics and shit.
Also, thank you, Revan.
Yeah, it's good to see you, man. All right. I'm gonna cut us off here. We'll see you guys next week, and I'll keep you updated on the technical difficulties situation. As soon as we can get this shit fixed, then I'll start trying to put the normal content back up. But hopefully, in the meantime, this will give you something to listen to at least. Leave some comments if you happen to catch this later, guys. See you. And Revan, yeah, I'll see if we can catch you for the next one. So don't worry. All right. Later, everybody.
Later.